So today, yes, we're talking about a highly flexible approach. We're talking about the things that we are doing at the DMS and how we are approaching things. We're upgrading our crisis response. Okay, so back in March, when COVID hit the world, we came up with our cautious, caring, and optimistic approach, and we are upgrading that now. Now that things are beginning to happen again, we're beginning to meet in person again. And the virus is changing, it's mutating, it's something different. We don't know where it's going to go from here, but life is changing. So we need to keep up with it. We're not just going to disappear on you and keep you disconnected. DMS is all about connecting you to live music. So that's what we are going to continue to do. And last week we explored how we're going to do that with a fine-tuned approach. And today we're going to explore our flexible approach. And then next week we're going to be talking about our forward approach. So highly flexible approach, that's the topic for today. What does this mean? What is this all about? So I think flexibility is something that is overused and is used in a lot of different ways, a lot of different terms. For example, we asked the question this morning, have you done any exercises this morning that help you get flexible, warmed up? I have to do exercises all the time for my shoulders so that when I'm conducting I don't hurt my shoulders. So you know, there's the physical flexibility, but there's also the approach of what we do that needs to be flexible. And this kind of got inspired by many different things, including Dave Gustafsson. He was actually sharing something about being flexible and about being very highly flexible in the world. But I like what Jordan Peterson says about this. It's actually not directly about being flexible, but it's directly related. Jordan Peterson says, be careful who you compare yourself to. Be careful who you compare yourself to. This is important. And if you have the worksheet, great. It's my dms.co/WP0014, where you can download that worksheet and you can actually fill this out as we go along. Just stay with us. Get your mind thinking as you fill out each little bullet point there. But what does it mean by be careful who you compare yourself to? We're going to explore that today because I think a lot of the problems that we face, particularly in today's society, is the fact that we are comparing ourselves to the wrong thing and definitely the wrong people. In fact, if anything, we often fall into the comparison trap. And the comparison trap is detrimental. It's one of the reasons why so many people have so many issues and come across so many problems is because we're comparing ourselves to the wrong things and we fall into the comparison trap. We get trapped by comparing ourselves and what we're doing with what other people are doing. And there are some problems with that. For example, you may end up actually replicating services. You may end up actually doing the same thing as somebody else, which geographically that may be okay. If you are in the same town and you're doing exactly the same service as somebody else, and that could be a problem. But if you're in a different part of the state or a different part of the world or whatever, it's okay to replicate. But you need to be careful about who you're comparing yourself to. You don't want to be a restaurant that's serving exactly the same menu as a restaurant down the street, because then there is no comparison there. You're going to be fighting, it's going to be a lot of tension, all that kind of stuff, and you don't need that in life. There's enough problems in life as it is without all of that going on as well. So replicating services is a problem. It depends on who you compare yourself to, that you actually just copy somebody else and do exactly the same thing as them in the same area, in the same region. So that's not good. The second thing about the comparison trap is that you end up duplicating effort. Now, this is an interesting one. I just recently had a conversation with someone about what the heck do I mean? Because I say this quite often. Duplicating effort means basically reinventing the wheel. It's when, and we do this in music. I don't understand it. It's so prevalent in the arts, where we think we're the first people to ever come across a specific circumstance or situation. and then we try and learn and figure things out as though it's the first time anyone on the planet has ever come across that situation or circumstance. And I don't get that at all. What a waste of energy and effort. Why not learn from what other people have experienced? Why not just take what other people have done and look at what worked for them and what didn't work for them, and then instead of just try and duplicate what they've did, improve on it, learn from what they've done. Duplicating effort to me is such a waste of energy and effort and whatever else. It's like the kind of area where every group, every choir in an area sings the same repertoire every holiday concert, for example. You know, you get your standard favorites. Handel's Messiah. Okay, it's a great piece of music. And everyone does the same movements from Handel's Messiah every holiday. In fact, I think most choirs tend to do it at Christmas, even though it's an Easter piece of music. So there's duplication of effort going on, but even the promotion, even the audience, and this is why we end up with audiences of 10, 15, 20 people. I know I've been to concerts, many concerts, particularly choral concerts, where there are more people on stage than there are in the audience. And it's embarrassing for everybody. And you think, what a waste of time, energy, and effort has gone into putting this performance on for such a handful of people. Well, that's because you're duplicating effort. You know, people now can choose which one they go to when it suits them. And it doesn't work that way. So be careful about who you compare yourself to, so that you don't replicate what they're doing, don't duplicate the effort that's going into it. And I think what you need to do is actually compare yourself to you. Does that sound a little weird? This is a good thing. Compare you to you. And the easiest way to do that is, am I better today than I was yesterday? That's it. It's that simple. Am I doing this in a better way than I did the last time? If you attend a weekly rehearsal for an ensemble, or if you go to a concert, which a lot of us used to do a lot, haven't done so much in the last few months. But am I approaching this concert differently or better than I did the last time I went to a concert? So comparing yourself to yourself, I think, is good. Just be careful who you compare yourself to. Don't fall into the comparison trap. You don't want to duplicate effort. You don't want to replicate the services that you're offering. You just want to compare to how you were yesterday or the day before. Are you better today than you were yesterday? That helps you stay flexible. That approach means that you're always going to improve and get better and live a better life, basically. Because you're not comparing yourself to something that's completely unrelated. You have no idea of the circumstances of other people and other groups. So in order to remain flexible and to do things a little bit differently, or that are just suited for you and not for anyone else, avoid the comparison trap. The second thing that you can do is, in fact, is to shift your expectations. Find shifting expectations. Your expectations may be different to somebody else's. What you want out of life, the universe, and everything may be different to somebody else. So the flexible approach that the DMS is taking now is that our expectations are probably going to shift a little bit. They're not going to be what they were 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago when we started. You know, our flagship ensemble, the Dunedin Concert Band, was started in 1981. I think the expectations for that group have changed considerably over the last 30 years. That's a good thing. If they stay static and stay the same, it's like almost anything. I guess you could say it's like the weather. It's constantly shifting. There are times in history when it's warm. There are times in history when it's cold. Of course, you can dive into the political aspects if you really want to go there, and are humans contributing to global warming, all that kind of stuff. Fine, that's a whole different conversation. What I'm talking about is that the fact is that the world is a living, breathing thing. It's getting warmer, it's getting colder. It happens, it goes through cycles. And it's the same with us. Our expectations change and they shift. For example, here's a great question to ask yourself. If you ever find yourself in any situation and you're not quite sure what's going on, or you are falling into the comparison trap, or you're hearing things that don't seem to line up with your expectations, just ask yourself, what if what you're hearing, or what if what you believe is not true? It's a what if. It's one of the only what ifs that I actually support and encourage. What if it's not true? For example, you may have an expectation that all performers will practice during the week. They will spend hours and hours and hours practicing on their own so that when they come to a rehearsal, we can actually rehearse instead of treating it like a practice session. Well, what if that's not true? What if most people in your group don't practice? What if your expectations are that your car can drive 300 miles on one tank of gas? Okay, well, that's a great expectation. You know how many times you're going to have to fill up your gas tank on a trip and all that kind of such. But what if that's not true? What if it's a little less? You don't want to get stuck, do you? So this is where shifting expectations comes from. It's just confirm it. I mean, it may be true. Maybe you may get 300 miles out of your gas tank, and that's great. You may get more. But every once in a while, just to remain flexible, just to make sure that everything's going to be okay, just ask yourself, what if what I believe, what if what I'm hearing is not true? Because I think one of the biggest mistakes that we make as humans, and we do this in the music world all the time, is that we assume that things still work. We assume that everything works the way it always has. We don't seem to accept the fact that things change over time. And when you need to shift your expectations, because you can't assume that everything still works. So what you've been doing for the last 10, 20, 30 years is going to keep working. It's going to stay the same. You cannot assume it still works. A lot of people don't like change, and we hide behind that. We can't get away from it. Things are going to change regardless. And although we work for stability, we want our comfort zones. And we've done a whole session on the safety of comfort zones. We want the familiar. We like the familiar. There's that wonderful phrase out there, better the devil you know than the one you don't. We don't like change in general, but change is going to happen. And the problem is when we assume that things are still going to work in the same way that they always have. For example, that little device that you may have on your desk or your table, we call it a phone. When was the last time you actually used it as a phone? Well, a lot of people talk a lot on their phones. A lot of people don't. They very rarely use them as phones. They use them for email and social media and all sorts of apps and games and whatever else. Those things may change over time. The way the phone works may change over time. Do you remember the time when we lost buttons on a phone? Even on the mobile, on the cell phones, we actually had buttons. And now we don't even have buttons. So don't always assume that what you're doing works. Your filing system, your practice schedule, your instrument, the music that you're doing, the way that you approach your music. Every once in a while, just ask yourself, is this still working? Could we do it better? And as I said before, this is the shifting expectations thing is vital. When you compare yourself to you, get out of that comparison trap, you shift your expectations. Are you better today than you were yesterday? So important. Because if you ask yourself that question, you actually may find your expectations shift over time. And you know what? It's okay. You're allowed to change your expectations. Please don't get so rigid and wrapped up in what you've always believed to be the one and only possible option. There are some things in life that you can't get away from, like gravity. Okay, gravity isn't going to change too much. It does change over time. It changes in the seasons. All right, that's all scientific fact. It's all proven now, and the world isn't flat anymore. But there are people who still believe it's flat. There are still people who believe gravity doesn't change, that there's no variance, but there is. And if you just learn that, if you adopt that, if you ask those questions, what if what I believe is not true? What if what I'm doing isn't always going to work the way it does now? Then you can get better today than you were yesterday, which I think is awesome. And then the third thing about being flexible and having a flexible approach. So we've gone through the comparison trap. We've gone through shifting expectations, both our own as well as organizationally. But the third thing is consistent delivery. Whatever it is that you choose to do with your day, your hour, your life, consistent delivery, not even constant, but consistent, meaning regular, reliable. That actually does three things. Well, it does lots of things for us, but it does make us more amenable. It makes us more approachable. It makes us more human. It creates that stability that we're looking for amidst the way the world changes all the time. Is to try and remain as consistent as you possibly can. For example, these weekend preludes are always at 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning. That's consistent. The content is hopefully very useful for you, and we try and deliver consistently good content for you, better than it was last week. This is all about a flexible approach. Consistently delivering. How do you actually do that? The first thing is you need to make decisions. You actually need to make a choice. And I'm talking about your own decisions, not just any decision or just letting other people make decisions for you, but decisions need to be made. One of the things I'm very proud of with the Dunedin Music Society is the way the leaders, the decision makers, make their decisions. When the for example, we have a board. They're an oversight governance board, so they meet once a quarter, but we have an executive committee that meets every month. And if there's nothing that needs deciding, if we don't need to actually make any decisions, we don't meet. We don't even talk about stuff. It's not an update session. It's not a session with lots of charts and forms and reports and how you're doing and all that kind of stuff. We can do that online. We can do that via email. We can see what's going on. We don't need to meet for that. What we need to meet for are decisions. So you can deliver things consistently when you make decisions. Now, when you make those decisions, they have to come with a success measure. They have to come with something that says, yes, that decision was good, or no, it wasn't. We have to come up with something that says, did we succeed? Did we achieve what we set out to do? What effect did that decision have? So define a success measure for whatever it is that you're going to share, whether you're a performer or even as a listener. If you're going to go to a concert, obviously you decide which concert to go to and why you're going to go to it. Before you go, you decide what you're looking for. Am I looking for a change in my emotional state? Am I looking to learn something about the music? Am I there to hear some music I haven't heard before? Am I there to hear music I have heard before and I want to hear again? Am I going to interact with a specific performer? What is it that I'm actually going to do? What is that success measure? Because all of those things that I just listed, you can check off. You say, yes, I did that. Because the bottom line is, in order to consistently deliver something to the world and contribute to the world, yes, you have to make decisions. Yes, you actually have to know what your success measure is. And then once you've got that, once you've done those two things, you know it's either going to work or it isn't. It's either going to work or it won't work. It's that simple. If you are a listener and you go to a concert and you want to hear new repertoire, was there a piece of music on there that I haven't heard before? It's either yes or no. It's that simple. And your approach to life, if you remain flexible, if you go to every single concert like that, you may actually achieve 50-50. Who knows? Depends on which concerts you choose to go to. If you go in order to interact with a specific performer, you may or may not get to meet that performer and say hi to them. You know, either that will work or it won't. Think about a filing system. The way that you keep your filing system, all your files, all your papers, all your documents, whatever it is that you need to exist in life, all your bills, copies of your bills, whatever, all your contracts. What is your filing system? Make a decision on how you're going to maintain these things. Define a success measure that you can easily find the materials that you want when you need them. Because either your filing system is going to work or it's not. You're practicing if you're a performer. If you're singing a particular song coming up soon, or even the national anthem at a sports event, you make decisions about how you're going to perform it. Are you going to memorize it or are you going to read it? What's the success measure? Is it the fact that you actually stun everybody so much that they don't applaud, they're just so taken aback? Or is it that they all join in and you get them actually singing along with you? What is your success measure? Because whatever it is, it's either going to work or it isn't. That makes life so simple. So the flexible approach that the DMS is taking and has been taking for a long time, but we're now defining it a little bit, is the fact that we avoid the comparison trap. We're not going to replicate services that go on around town. We're not going to do the virtual band thing because there are so many other groups around the world doing that already. We're not going to duplicate effort. We try and avoid duplication of effort. There are so many groups that try and learn how to do the same things over and over again. Well, the DMS exists to bring those groups together so they don't have to duplicate the energy and effort in connecting local communities with live music. And the DMS is going to compare itself to itself. Each group is going to compare itself to itself, not any of the other groups, not anything else going on around Pinellas County or Florida or the world. Just us. That's what we're going to compare ourselves to. Our expectations are going to shift over time. Because what if what we believe isn't true? Well, maybe we'll have to change a little bit. Maybe we have to adjust. Maybe we have to be flexible. Because not everything we do will work consistently. We can't always assume it still works. If it does, don't change it. But it may or may not. We just don't know until we ask that question. And as long as we're better today than we were yesterday, we're on the good path. We're on the right path. That's where we want to be. We want to deliver things consistently. We're going to make decisions all the time and actually make a decision. We're going to define what our success looks like for that decision. And then it's either going to work or it won't work. And if it doesn't work, we won't do it again. But we'll try at least. And then we'll try something else, okay? So I hope you understand now the flexible approach, the highly flexible approach the DMS is taking. And maybe there's some stuff you can pull out here for your own life. Whether or not you volunteer and contribute to the DMS or any of its ensembles or even its audiences, this could be very helpful. Please do let me know, in fact, in the comments, whether you like this or not. And by the way, I think we've got some, Josh, you have to confirm, we've got some of these messages up on YouTube. I can't remember, but this is I love this, the direction that we're taking, fine-tuned as we explored last week, flexible, and next week we're going to be talking about how we move forward. So back to you, Joshua.